Namaste and welcome to the JNMA podcast, where we explore important research published in our journal. I am your host, Lishasha, and today we are focusing on a significant but often overlooked topic that is postpartum depression. We will be diving into a research titled Postpartum Depression Among Mothers in a Maternity Hospital, Kathmandu, Nepal, which employs a mixed method approach to understand this important issue. To help us understand this study more deeply, I am excited to be joined by one of the authors of the study, Mr. Nischal Devkota. Mr. Nischal is a public health professional who has been working as an assistant professor and head of research and development department at National Open College. Welcome, Nischal ji. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Lisa ji. It's a privilege.
Research on postpartum depression is a very important as well as a sensitive topic. And additionally, in your research, you have incorporated both qualitative and quantitative method to capture a full picture of this issue. So while conducting this research, were there any feasibility challenges that you encountered? For example, it could be in terms of data collection or processing time, or any other challenges that you faced throughout the research process, Nishalji?
Well, gaining access to the mothers in a hospital setting actually posed a great challenge in this study. Further, the time for the interview to keep them engaged for data collection was what makes this study a little different than particularly with respect to qualitative responses. Finally, it's all about evoking the strong emotions while conducting in-depth interview was particular part that was a little difficult since every time while interviewing, we need to ensure the comfort and we need to empathize our respondents time and again.
So that's really interesting to know. Now, moving forward, research often begins with a personal interest and the desire to address a significant gap in the field. So, what motivated you to conduct this research, this particular study?
Actually, in our context, in the country like Nepal, pregnancy and postpartum condition situation is often shrouded in taboos and often linked up with stigmas,
Mm-hmm.
and which we found that it could lead to postpartum depression.
Mm-hmm.
However, the family or society often portrays a pregnancy, a motherhood as a joyful experience. We may lead mothers to keep silence about their feelings of inadequacy, particularly in this period. We, as authors, were interested to explore their experiences, particularly the taboos and the coping mechanisms by mothers, which could actually navigate into understanding and addressing the issues more vividly in the study.
So, yeah, that's such an important driving factor. And it's always fascinating to hear how personal and professional experiences lead researcher to tackle such big issues. Globally, postpartum depression is recognized as a serious concern, but it seems like it does not receive the same level of attention in Nepal. You have highlighted that gap as well. So, what steps did you take to ensure your study would offer something new, whether through your approach or findings? Like, how did you assess the novelty of your research?
So we were actually interested about the burden it posed in the current context, current time, which we believe could really examine whether previous recommendations from the prior researchers were applied to reduce the burden of postpartum depression or not. So the good part is the prevalence is seen reduced to 12% in our study. Uh,
Mm,
but the thing is that we believe that sufficient interventions have not been yet aligned to make it to zero. Actually, it should be zero, but you know what? The people often tend to, my colleagues or other researchers tend to call me or show me that It's not a part that you could dwell into, but
Mm-hmm.
always I always thus we thought of incorporating actually the qualitative responses. In this case, it could open up some crucial components that could be addressed to minimize the postpartum depression kind of ailment or to address the conditions effectively. Like our
Mm-hmm.
study focused on coping mechanisms as a self-care practice and acknowledging their mixed feelings in postpartum depression. Actually, I wanted to say that it's a crucial issue to investigate, to research a postpartum depression, but people often tend to tell me that uh, uh, so many studies have been conducted in postpartum depression. So why should we again conduct postpartum depression and know this status? But the thing is that in 2024 also there's a prevalence of 12%. Yet there is a gap. And so many things need to be done to suppress it to zero.
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting to know. Like, it's clear that novelty in your approach really adds value to the body of knowledge on this topic, especially here in Nepal. Now, when you're conducting research with vulnerable populations, such as postpartum mother and people living with mental health problem, ethical concerns are always front and center. So, were there any specific ethical challenges you had to navigate during the study, such as like obtaining informed consent or ensuring emotional safety for the participants?
As we dealt into the sensitive topic, the part of consent taking was little time consuming.
Mm,
As stigmatization is also prevalent, the respondents were firstly they were so reluctant to give interviews. However, after making them understand about privacy and the confidentiality, particularly, we told them about their name would not be revealed in the interview or the paper, and they
mhm.
only agreed for the participation.
So it sounds like you took great care in handling this sensitive issue, which is so important when dealing with mental health research.
Yes, you're right.
So, like, did you refer any of the like mental health, mentally ill client to any other referral center?
In our study, if you dwell into our study, the
Mm-hmm.
severity of depression was also there among some
Mm-hmm.
respondents. And whoever were identified by our tool as a depressive patients, even for moderate, even for mild depressive patients,
Mm-hmm.
we went to them and we referred them to psychiatrist.
That sounds really great. So, yeah, finally, let's talk about the relevance. Postpartum depression can have profound effect not just on mothers but also their children and families. Like, so how did you assess the relevance of the study, particularly in context of maternal healthcare in Nepal?
Actually, what we believe, this study is a basic pose of fundamental public health impact. Like it helps to understand the dynamics of postpartum depression, and I think it could inform healthcare policies and thereby improving maternal child health care. The second thing is that the postpartum depression exploration in qualitative context would align customized interventions like addressing taboos, enhancing self-care and coping mechanisms, and other support structures too, or kind of support systems too. And
Mm-hmm.
finally, identifying the prevalence of postpartum depression would help to know where we are on the mental health grants. And I think it would help mitigate long-term effects on mother and their children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so thank you, Nischal ji, for sharing your insights and experiences with us today. It's been a truly enlightening discussion, and I'm sure our listeners have taken away a lot of valuable information.
Thank you so much for inviting me to put words in the published paper and its operational issues. Thank you, Lisazi.
Thank you. And a big thank you to our listeners for tuning into this episode of JNMA Podcast. Stay with us for more insightful conversation with leading experts in healthcare and research. Until next time, goodbye.